Hello everybody, today I'm doing a countdown of the top 10 most overrated bands of all time, and the bands that I'm talking about are going to be bands who were popular with the baby boomer generation and the Gen X generation. And of course the reason for that is because there may be younger performers that should be on the list of overrated performers, but I'm not really familiar with singers like Taylor Swift or Beyonce or Rihanna, who are very popular, but I couldn't tell you if they're overrated because I couldn't name one song by any of these people. I'm going to stick with the bands that I am familiar with and comfortable with, and that's how I am doing my countdown. My name is Dawn Dickinson, and the channel is about living your best life over 55 years old. Okay, before I begin, I want to let you know my criteria. I'm not saying that none of these bands are talented. Certainly many of these bands are talented. Some of the bands, the actual individual band members themselves might have talent, but they don't necessarily produce together the amount of fantastic music that their reputation leads us to believe. So the criteria here is that they are more popular than they are talented, and that's why I'm describing them as overrated. So I'm going to start with number one, which would be ACDC. Now, the thing is, I actually do like ACDC, and I really like the Back in Black album. Some of my favorite songs, like Highway to Hell, or Back in Black, or Shoot to Thrill, I mean, those are very good songs. But what happened, of course, after Bon Scott died and then Brian Johnson came in and did the Back in Black album, those again, very good albums. But after about 1982 on for the next 40 years, you would hear AC/DC songs on the radio, and they were just regurgitating their old sound over and over again. They would take like the same few notes and they would rearrange it and change the lyrics, and then they would have a new sound. Like, I did see them in concert a few times back in the mid 1990s, and they were good, but again, it's like, you know, that song Cover Me with Oil. I mean, oh, so awful. It's just the same thing over and over again. So again, I did like AC/DC, and I still like their older songs, but I do think they're overrated because they've been playing for 40 years and their sound sounds the same, just twisted around and redesigned over and over and over again. Okay, at number 9, I am putting Green Day. Now, I have no idea why that band was so popular when they started out in the 1990s. It was like, they're okay, but how did they continue to play forever and ever and ever? And they have, you know, maybe mediocre songs. I mean, that song, Do You Have the Time to Listen to Me Whine? Like, how horrible is that? Like, no, I don't. Let's change the radio station. But they are super popular, and what's odd is they seem to be popular with young people. I don't know how that ever happened. I think a lot of their popularity might have happened when Kurt Cobain died, because there was this little void in that era, and who was going to step in and take their place? Maybe that the Green Day band was just in the right place at the right time. Certainly not a lot of talent there. Of course, my opinion, I know this whole list is my opinion, right? But really, Green Day is very high on my list. I'm putting them at number 9. Not saying that they have no talent at all. It's just that their popularity way overshadowed the amount of talent they have, and their music, it's kind of mediocre at best. And usually if I hear a Green Day song on the radio, I'm going to switch to another station. At number 8, I'm putting the Cranberries. Now, Cranberries were super popular with the Gen X generation, and of course I am at the last year of the baby boomers, so I'm right in between Gen X and baby boomer. Cranberries, again, very sad when their lead singer died. Now, I'm going to admit, I don't even know her name. I don't know the name of any of the Cranberries members. I couldn't even name a title of any of their songs, but I do know as soon as I hear one of their songs on the radio, I immediately recognize, because of that singer's whiny, horrible nails and chalk on the blackboard kind of sound. I mean, it actually sounds like a cat outside of your window at 11:30 p.m. in heat, or maybe the lamb at the slaughterhouse dying, a dying animal. That's how bad the voice is of the Cranberries lead singer, and I can't imagine how they got so popular. Again, I feel sad that she died of an overdose a few years ago. I don't wish that on anybody. Certainly don't want anyone to die and have a tragic ending, but oh my goodness, how did they ever get popular? They're just terrible, and if I ever have to hear them again, I'm gonna run screaming to the other room until the dying, screeching animal sound is gone. Okay, at number 7, I'm putting the B-52s. Now, when I was in high school, the last junior, senior years, when they started to get popular, and I don't understand why anybody liked that sound. The first one was Rock Lobster. Actually, they would play Rock Lobster at the high school dances, and we're all like looking around like, how the heck do you dance to this song, you know? And it goes on for like 25 minutes of them singing this horrible Rock Lobster, and at the end, you know, at the dance, people are like throwing themselves on the floor and flopping around like a fish out of water. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Actually, it was a starting point of this transition of music in the 80s that I was never quite fond of. My best friend loved that kind of music, but I was like, oh, I'm going to stick to the old rock and roll bands like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and whoever was the heavy male hair bands of the 80s. But the B-52s, man, that sound is awful. And then the other one, that Love Shack, man, everybody loved the Love Shack, but not me, man. I was running for the radio, trying to hit the knob every time B-52s come on. They were a pretty overrated band, and I still agree that they are today. But that is similar to my number 6 choice that has the same sound that I never really liked, that kind of transitioned and took over the good rock and roll sound of the 80s, is R.E.M. Oh, man, that's so bad, that sound. Again, I couldn't tell you the lead singer's name because I didn't like them, so I was not going to ever get any information on him. But that song, like Losing My Religion and Orange Crush and Man in the Moon, and then they would play that little mandolin. Oh, it sounded terrible. Okay, the one song I kind of liked was The End of the World as We Know It. So again, I'm not saying that all of these musicians were terrible. They did have one good song, R.E.M., and then they had a boatload of crapola that I don't know how anyone could stand to hear, but yet there was a whole generation of people, especially the Gen Xers, who loved R.E.M. and the B-52s, while I'm gagging every time they came on the radio. And that brings me to number 5, who probably resonates more with baby boomers than the Gen Xers, but that is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Wow, that guy thought he's still alive, so yeah, he thinks he's the greatest guy of all time, greatest singer of all time. Man, I don't think so at all. But now, I don't want to say that he's completely talentless. He does have some good songs. I loved the Born to Run album. I loved Born to Run itself. I loved 10th Avenue Freeze Out. He had a couple of good songs. He actually wrote a lot of the songs for Man for Man. He actually wrote, I love that song, I Came For You. I think he wrote that. But the Blinded by the Light, he wrote that song. Now, if you ever hear him perform Blinded by the Light, gag me time. It is so horrible. His version of the songs that were performed by Man for Man is amazing. Man for Man did a great job. He, I guess, is a good songwriter, but just his terrible singing and performing was bad. Now, again, I was saying that I liked Born to Run. I liked some of the songs off of Born to Run, but then when you go to that Tunnel of Love album, that's really where it all started to turn. Tunnel of Love, and then Glory Days. That, again, another horrible song by Bruce Springsteen, but yet a lot of people in my generation, and the Gen X's too, you hear Bruce Springsteen, and they're like, oh man, he is a god of rock. And I'm like, I beg to differ. I don't think so. So Bruce Springsteen, number 5 on my list of most overrated performers and bands, and he is halfway through the countdown. At number 4, I'm putting Neil Young. Now, again, I'm going to get some criticism for this. I don't like Neil Young as a person, and I certainly don't like him as a performer. I think he's very anti-American, and I don't like when performers come and they bash our country. So that's already a bad start with Neil Young. Now, when he was with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, not so bad, but his solo stuff was crap. And that Harvest or Harvest Moon album was terrible, but yet one of the highest rated albums ever. Again, I don't know why. He has got this whiny, horrible voice. Now, imagine this if he had some show like American Idol or America's Got Talent, and Neil Young goes up there and he starts wailing away with this whining, oh man, take a look. Like, he'd be booed off in 5 seconds. So I don't understand how he ever got so popular with songs like Old Man, Take a Look at My Life, or Four Dead in Ohio, or Heart of Gold, or Cinnamon Girl. All awful songs. Why is Neil Young so popular? I don't know. I know a long time ago, not a long time ago, a couple a while ago he was complaining about something controversial with politics and he's going to remove himself from Spotify. I don't know. All ridiculous stuff, but his talent is nowhere near what his ratings were, so he's number 4 on my overrated bands of all time. And that brings me to number 3. Now, number 3 is kind of a sad story. I actually think they had some good music. I like their songs, and it's Nirvana. So Nirvana, again, I love that Smells Like Teen Spirit and whatever that album was with the Floating Baby, you know, it was a good album. But then Kurt Cobain, being a heroin addict and, you know, after his death, he went to icon status. Nirvana went to icon status, and that's how they became super overrated. Again, I do think they had some talent. I do think they had some good music, but wow, after the death of Kurt Cobain, now they're gods, you know, and I'm like, yeah, they're just kind of okay. Kind of like an overrated garage band, and maybe had he lived, they might have been doing some good music after that, but we don't know. I do feel bad about the circumstances leading to his death. I hate to see that happen to anybody, even people that I don't like. Not that I didn't like Kurt Cobain, it's just that I thought he was like, okay, and then he died, and then everybody in the world worshipped him. He's the icon of the Gen X generation. Please spare me. If that's the best you can come up with, I think we're in a lot of trouble. So Nirvana is taking my number 3 spot of overrated bands. But now we're going to go to number 2, and number 2 is The Doors. Now, what the heck is up with The Doors? Jim Morrison, not bad, not horrible singer, kind of like okay singer. Their music, though, but they were rock icons in the 70s. Actually, what year? He may have died in 1970. I don't know. Rock gods in the 60s and early 70s. Jim Morrison, though, was a horrible person. He treated people bad. He gets up on stage. He pulls out his junk in front of stage. Like, who does that? He was rude and disrespectful to people, drunk and stoned all the time. Again, sad that he died the way that he died, but at 27, such a young age. But again, very overrated. I mean, think of these songs. Hello, I love you. Can I, whatever. You know, light my fire. Break on through to the other side. Boring, plain, nothing special about any of those songs. Now, occasionally, LA Woman I thought was kind of interesting. A couple of decent songs, but nothing like Superstar. Icon of rock and roll statuses. You know, I think because of his death, it got overrated too, but they were on the path for being overrated long before he died, and then after he died, you know, then it was over. But him, I don't think he was a very good human being. I thought he treated people terribly, and when he's up on stage drunk, falling off his ass, that's very disrespectful for your fans, and then you whip it out on stage in Florida, and now you're banned from the state of Florida. Like, who behaves like that? Let's just act like normal human beings and not treat your fans who are paying tons of money to see you and are making you the success that you are. Let's treat the fans with some respect. So The Doors, high on my list at number 2. Now, number 1, probably going to get me totally hated, but it's the Beatles. So I want to back up a little bit and again go on with the criteria of how I am selecting the people on this list. The reason Beatles is number 1 is because they are rated constantly as the number 1 band of all time. Like, really? How about I Want to Hold Your Hand? Boring. Help. Boring. Like your freaking high school band class could write better songs than that. Now, occasionally they did some good songs. I liked Let It Be. That was one I loved. We Can Work It Out. So I'm not saying the Beatles were all crap musicians, but I say they have a lot of crap songs and they're way overrated. Now, let's think about the Beatles in another way. I think the 4 musicians actually were probably all very talented and maybe did stuff on their own solo after they departed that was better than what they did with the Beatles, except for John Lennon. Man, that double platinum crap that he sang right before he died, that was so horrible. Him and Yoko Ono, that was just awful. And again, sad what happened to John Lennon. What I didn't like about John Lennon is he is at the rock icon superstar, the representation of peace and love, and it's like, really? You know, he treated his wife terrible. I'm not talking about Yoko, I'm talking about his first wife and how he treated his son, Julian Lennon. How did he become the face of peace and love for that generation? That I don't know. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't have talent. George Harrison, I actually love George Harrison. He and I share a birthday. Of course, he was about maybe 15, 20, I don't know how old he was. He probably 20 years older than me, but we share a birthday. I do like George Harrison. I love his solo work. Again, I think he was better outside of the Beatles. McCartney, again, fantastic. I love Paul McCartney. I actually like what he did with Wings better than what he did with the Beatles. Again, he as himself probably not an overrated musician, but when you put him with the Beatles, definitely Beatles overrated. And then again, Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr, man, that man has aged better than anyone I know. I mean, he is the same age as my mother at like 82, 83 years old, and yet he's out there very active doing stuff. Seems like a good person. Again, it seems like McCartney and Harrison and Ringo were good human beings, but the Beatles together, all four of them, horribly overrated. Now my daughter's ex-boyfriend is probably having a cow if he would see this, but again, I put them at number one. You guys can flame me if you want, but I think the Beatles were, oh my gosh, almost all of their songs, if I hear them, I run for the radio. So that's my list of the top 10 most overrated bands of all time, and these are, of course, Gen X and Baby Boomer bands. If you have any that I missed, go ahead and put them on the list. There were a few that have honorable mention, like Allman Brothers I was going to put on there, but no, these other 10 beat them out. And again, I think there's probably a ton of the younger ones that could be on there, like Taylor Swift. To me, she seems like she's overrated, but again, I don't know a single one of her songs. I just don't understand where this Swifties things comes into play. So again, my name is Don Dickinson. I do post videos every single week, and my channel is supposed to support people over 55 and help us to live our best lives. So living your best life over 55. If you enjoyed the video, please do me a favor and like the video, give me a thumbs up, and hopefully subscribe. I post videos every single week that are of interest to people in our age group. So I hope to see you back here again next week.